Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
Well, I think we've officially entered the rock concert portion of the podcast.
That's right. Did you hear that go slow there for a second?
I don't know what was going on.
It's just going to play again. So, yeah.
We're just going to rock out for the hour, I think.
I guess so. Right. If you guys haven't realized it, we're testing new software.
So welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast NCAA edition Week 2 picks. That was a wonderful intro that time. I hope it was as loud as it came out on our end as it is on your end. With me today, Reese, as always, co-host, coming off a wonderful college football weekend. You have any opening thoughts?
Oh, I excited about how some of these games turned out. Really interested and ready to talk about Colorado TCU. Ready to talk about those locks. We both performed much better this last week than we did in week 0. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. Had a couple upsets that were interesting. And not to mention too early that your Knowles pulled one out. So yeah, I'm ready to get going here.
Yeah, if you guys can't tell, my voice might sound a little different today. It was a rather Doak South crowd in Orlando Sunday night. It was pretty amazing. Still trying to get the voice back, but we're gonna battle through it. As Reese just mentioned, the picks. So week 0, there were only like 7 games. I think we both got one, if I remember right, and I don't think either one of us hit our locks. Well, this week was much better week for us. I was 14-12. He was 15-11, and both of us hit our locks. And I believe last week I said, if you listen to anything, just listen to our locks and you'll make money. Well, that happened last week for sure.
There we go.
So, we're going to jump right in to my lock. It was the Thursday night game. I told you we were going to know quick. Florida was at Utah. Utah ended up winning the game 24-11 with a backup quarterback. Cam Rising was listed as the starting quarterback on the depth chart. That was some nice ploy by Kyle Whittingham because he didn't play. He never even really got close to playing. And again, this week, he is listed as number 1 on the depth chart, so I'm kind of interested in that also. Utah's defense came out, held Trevor Etienne to only 25 yards on 7 carries, and basically just led the show. We talked about how Mertz was awful. He wasn't very good in the game. Both of us had Utah. Both of us got a win there. You have anything on that game, Reese?
No, I mean, it kicked off with a bang with that 70-yard touchdown on the very first play. And Florida never really recovered from there. Not too much of a surprise to either of us. We had Utah winning. Kind of interested to see how Utah plays as we continue on to the year.
Yeah, and we're going to continue with a Pac-12 battle here. Well, not battle, but another Pac-12 upset. Colorado was at number 17 TCU. TCU was a 20.5-point favorite. Last week when I was giving my prediction, I said Colorado could win this game. I think they're going to struggle later in the season, but they could win this game. Their defense was not good, but neither was TCU's, so it didn't really matter. Colorado ended up winning outright 45-42. The Pac-12 debut of Shedeur Sanders, he went 38-47 for 510 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was a Colorado record. They had 4 receivers that ended up being over 100 yards, including a guy that I'm not too fond of, as we've mentioned before on here, Travis Hunter. He had 11 receptions for 119 yards, and he had one hell of an interception on defense, a diving pick, like the 3-yard line going in. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then TCU, like I said, Colorado's defense wasn't the best. TCU did have 541 yards while scoring 42 points. What were your thoughts on that game?
It was a really, really fun game to watch. I kept flipping back and forth between that and, unfortunately, the Ball State game, which was televised but was not a fun watch. We played really well the first quarter, and then it kind of went downhill from there. But yeah, this Colorado TCU game, man, it was a blast. 510 yards coming out of Sanders, breaking a school record right off the bat. Travis Hunter, as you mentioned, was everywhere. I understand why you don't like the guy because he didn't go to your Knowles. I'm a little bit more hyped and on Colorado right now than you are. I agree with you that their defense was a little lackluster, giving up 42 points, but is it really going to matter if they're putting 56 points up a game? I mean, it's kind of the USC conversation, right? Like if their
Yeah.
offense is going to be that potent, then their defense has the ability to give up points. Um, Now, don't get it twisted. TCU is not the TCU of last year, and they're going to have much tougher opponents. Starting this week, they're going to have a tougher opponent than what they had in TCU, I believe. But I'm excited to see what Colorado's going to do this year.
Yeah, and we'll get into it when we get to the Colorado Nebraska for the pick this week. We'll get a little bit more into it. But one thing that I do think, and Dion even kind of said it himself. He said we have the athletes, but I need the linemen. He needs the big boys to come. And that's where a lot of my philosophy behind their season is going to go. I don't think that they have the depth to handle what this schedule is going to end up being. Now, right now, I'm fine with them. I think that they can beat, clearly they just beat TCU. I think they're good against Nebraska. USC is actually coming up soon. I think they can beat USC. It's when they get to the teams that can actually play defense and have great lines that I think they're going to struggle. Plus, the depth is going to be a factor at that point also. So we're going to see a lot more. We're definitely going to be talking about this team all season long, whether it's good or bad. So we're going to have plenty more conversation when it comes to Colorado, especially later in this episode when we pick the Nebraska game. So I was 1-0 with my lock, Utah. The next game, Reese's lock. He had Penn State minus 20.5 against West Virginia. Anyone watch this game?
The unnecessary touchdown saved us both.
Right. With 6 seconds left, we'll call this the unnecessary, but very necessary to some touchdown. Not only did it hit the cover, but it also hit the over, which is what I had bet on this game. So it was two very good things for both of us. Drew Aller made his debut, 21 of 29, 325 yards for 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Keandre Lambert-Smith had 4 for 123 and 2 touchdowns. And my guy Malik McLean found the end zone, 4 for 58 with a touchdown. I know it was probably a sweat for you, but what did you think of your Penn State team?
Yeah, it was definitely a sweat. You and I were texting each other, and I got that text that like, "Oh, I can't believe they're not going for the field goal," and then they end up scoring the touchdown to get it for both of us. So, it was a fun game. I mean, Penn State was in control the entire time. Drew Aller looked really good and efficient. Again, looking forward to seeing what this Penn State team's gonna do if they can continue to improve. Is they're leading into their first major matchup against Ohio State. I think they have a legitimate shot at potentially winning the Big Ten Conference and going into the college football playoff.
Yeah, especially, it was week 1, but they were also playing IU, but Ohio State definitely has some questions still. Both quarterbacks are going to be playing again this week, Ryan Day announced today. So we're going to see what happens with them. But yeah, that's going to be a very big game in a few weeks. To flip this to West Virginia just for a second, if Duquesne contends with West Virginia this weekend, is that the end? Is Brown fired immediately?
I think so. Yeah. Even if it's a close game and they still win it, like 3-point win. Yeah, I mean his pants are on fire at this point.
Well, and
he has no leash.
I'm pretty sure after Duquesne, I think next week it's Pitt. So the backyard brawl, like it's not getting better for him. So what they need more than anything is to beat Duquesne by 50 this week, which we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you are correct too. They've got Pitt at 7:30 on the 16th. So,
what time is the Duquesne game? Is it a night game in Morgantown this week, or is it a nooner?
It's a 6 p.m. game.
That's good. Everyone will be liquored up enough to have forgotten about what happened in Happy Valley because the moonshine's going to be flowing in Morgantown for that one. Because Jesus, Neil Brown might die if that happens.
Have you been to West Virginia? When is the moonshine not flowing?
Well, that's true. The electricity will at least be on for the few hours they're allowed to have it. So, all right. Moving along, Sunday night in Orlando.
You're muted, buddy. It even shows you muted on the thing. It shows your microphone's muted. It says I can't unmute your microphone because you chose to mute it yourself.
Hello? Test?
Hey, there you are.
How did that happen? All right.
So I heard you say Orlando, and then you went dark.
All right. So Sunday night, number 5 LSU. It was a 2.5-point favorite versus Florida State in Orlando. Florida State ends up winning the game 45-24. At halftime, this game was 17-14. Florida State was down. And then came out, a little bit of adjustment with the offense, put 2 backs in the backfield, and Brian Kelly had no idea. He acted like he just saw a monkey throw poop. He didn't know what was going on. They had no adjustment whatsoever for that. 31 unanswered until LSU had a meaningless touchdown with a minute left that literally was against our third string. Jordan Travis, he did what he does. He did have a couple of boneheaded throws that I was not too pleased with him, but in the end, it all worked. He was 23 for 31, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns with 1 pick, and definitely should have had 2 picks. He threw one right into the hands of the defense. He also rushed for 38 yards with a touchdown on a beautiful pull that he wasn't even reading the guy. He was reading the other defensive end. And when the other guy came, the spider sense, apparently, he just backed out and was wide open. There was no one there. The Keon Coleman debut, we talked about him in the preview episode, transferring from Michigan State. 9 receptions, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns, and was virtually unstoppable in that game. With him, Johnny Wilson, 7 receptions, 104 yards. On the LSU side of it, Jaden Daniels was 22 of 37 for 347 yards with a touchdown and a pick, and then he rushed for 64 yards. Really the key for LSU's offense, they hit a deep threat early. Wide receiver Brian Thomas had 7 for 142 and a touchdown. What were your thoughts on the Florida State LSU game?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, my thoughts were I was happy for you because I know you didn't have the best track record at going to Florida State games.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they were able to pull out a dub for you. Keon Coleman was extremely impressive. That was a hell of a way to start the season. I don't have too much to add other than the fact that I thought the game was going to be closer than what it was. 31 unanswered is unheard of. And Brian Kelly had that team playing pretty well. I mean, all the way through last year. I mean, they finished the year strong. There were a couple of points in time where their defense looked a little lackluster compared to their offense, but yeah, I thought it was going to be a closer game than what it was. In fact, I flipped the channel for probably about 10, 15 minutes and went back to it. And I was like, what the hell happened? And then, that's when I started texting you to see where you were at. And I was getting all these live shots of the game and everything. It was a cool experience to hear all the Knowles fans chanting out there. But yeah, I think this tells more about the Florida State team than it may necessarily say about the LSU team, right? I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
I think.
Sorry, I was just saying. I just think it all started from the very beginning of the game. LSU went right down the field. First play of the game was a huge wheel route by the running back for like 40, 50 yards. They got down inside the 10, and Florida State's defense made 2 great stands. Then they gave him a penalty on a late hit, which was absurd. They did not even push him down. He just fell down.
Yeah.
Gave him 4 more plays, and the defense came up and that was one hell of a stand to start the game and send the message. And then they went down the field and scored with Keon hitting that slant. Like it was just a hell of a turnaround for that start of the game to send that message. And then once the second half came, the defense really came to life. It was a beautiful thing to watch. And especially after what happened last night with Clemson, I don't think I could have had a better weekend when it comes to how I feel about the ACC right now.
Yeah, Dabo is not agreeing with you right now.
Yeah, they were a 12.5-point favorite. And again, last week we said they were turning a lot of guys. This team is dangerous. This is going to be a game. Well, it was a game. Duke won 28-7. And maybe it wasn't a game, actually.
I was going to say, that's not a game.
Yeah. Quarterback Riley Leonard wasn't the best performance, really. 17 for 33 for 175 yards. But he did have 98 yards rushing with a touchdown. Cade Klubnik with the debut of the Garrett Riley want to say Lincoln Riley. He was 27 of 43, 209 yards with a touchdown. Will Shipley did what Will Shipley does, 17 rushes for 114 yards. He had 6 receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown. The big thing, though, Duke forced 2 fumbles in the red zone and blocked 2 field goals. So my favorite thing was the shot of the game of Klubnik going over to the sideline, Dabo trying to give him a high five, and he just kind of ran right by him. I was like, oh, that's not something you normally see in Clemson. So I am very happy that they already have a conference loss. We're 3 weeks away from, 2 weeks from this Saturday from playing Clemson, what's going to be a huge game in Clemson. But we've got a few games before then. What were your thoughts on Clemson and Duke?
Yeah, I thought the defense of Duke was the game changer in that game. A combination of that and the Clemson offense obviously couldn't get going. The Florida State Clemson game suddenly doesn't look as difficult as it did to start the season to me. If Florida State keeps this momentum, I think it can get ugly quick. And the only other thing that I really took away from it is at one point I flipped over to the game and they have, they do the scans in the crowd, and I have never seen so many sourpuss faces in that stadium. Like everybody was just like, what is happening right now? And I know you're not a big fan of Dabo.
No, I hate him.
I don't like or dislike the guy. He seems to be a decent human being and a motivator of
he is an
of his
absolute
players,
piece of shit.
I he seemed like he was trying to grasp at straws to get his team back in focus there towards the end of it, which is not something that I've seen for him because typically he's got his team under his wing, so that's a little different than what we've seen in the past.
Well, his NIL of God isn't quite helping him in the offensive skill positions right now, other than Will Shipley. So he might want to start thinking about NIL and transfer portal because his receivers suck. Like there is not one good receiver on that team. This is a team that Nuke, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins. They've had tons of talent at this school. Like they've been very good at receiver for the last since like 2013. So we're going 10 years where they've been
10
solid
years,
receiver, and now they're awful. And Shipley can't do it by himself. And with this new, and like I said last week, Cade Klubnik has not done anything yet. Like he gets hyped for being a good recruit, but he has not came on the field and done anything productive where I've been like, okay, this guy's an absolute stud yet. And to go 27 to 43 for 209 yards and 1 touchdown on a primetime stage on Labor Day, like you got to do a little more than that. That's why you lost. So
yeah.
I'm like, it's going to be a game. When Florida State and Clemson play in a couple of weeks, it's going to be a game. We should be undefeated at that point. We've got Southern Miss and then Boston College, and if we lose one of them, we've got bigger issues. But it's going to set up for a huge game. And with them already having a conference loss, that's also a huge deal when it comes to the conference championship now because there are no conferences. So our divisions, So any other loss kind of eliminates them from
I was going to say if
Florida State contention. That's
if they lose that game, they're not going to be in at the end.
Yep. All right. Well, that pretty much sums up our recap for last week. We're going to start moving into our picks for week 2. We are going to start off. Normally, this team's going to be in our Muncie 6-pack, but apparently they want to make some money, so they're probably getting paid $2 million, $3 million for this game. Ball State is traveling to number 1 Georgia. 43.5 is the line. I think last week we said Georgia didn't get a line last week, but we said if they would have had one, we would have taken them by 50. 50 wouldn't have actually covered. They only beat UT Martin 48-7. Well, Ball State went to Lexington and lost to Kentucky 44-14. Last week you took Ball State. What is your pick this week?
You know how many text messages I've gotten already about this damn game? The mighty Fighting Ball State Cardinals are back on the road to visit the scrub Georgia Bulldogs. We lost 44-14 last week in a game where we looked solid in the first quarter, and then things really started to fall apart, giving up 20 unanswered, including 2 fumble recoveries, and one of the field goal should have been a touchdown. The referee screwed up the call and called the play dead when Kentucky should have brought it back for a 6.
Yeah.
Offensive line struggled to protect the ball. Hatcher ended up getting replaced by Caden Simonza. It was serviceable, 15 for 21, 165. But all in all, Kentucky's defense woke up after the first quarter, and it wasn't pretty from there. This is obviously not a Kentucky team. I'm interested to see who's going to get the nod at QB on Saturday. All that said, I think Ball State may be able to put up at least 10 on the board. It'll probably come late, but I'm going to roll with my Cardinals in 43.5, man. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it's probably going to be an L, but I'm going to go with the 43.5 in Ball State.
I respect the decision. I'm going with Georgia minus the 43.5 just because I want to see. I was not. We've talked about it. I have a Heisman bet on Carson Beck. I was not that pleased with his performance against UT Martin. So hopefully, maybe Ball State's just what he needs to come out and actually put up some real numbers and look like a Heisman candidate. So my official pick will be Georgia covering the 43.5. Youngstown State at number 5, Ohio does not have a line yet. Last week we didn't. The games that we said we were going to put on our socials, they never ended up having a line. So hopefully this week, I think we'll get a little bit more when it comes to answers with like quarterback and injuries and stuff like that. I think we're going to get some lines this week. So Youngstown State at number 5, Ohio, and Delaware at number 7, Penn State are both going to be put on our socials once they have lines available. So we're going to move on. The next one that has a line, and this is actually going to be a fun game, I think. I've got a friend, Carter, big Notre Dame fan, who's definitely going to be having a few, maybe some things sent over from West Virginia for this game. So number 10, Notre Dame is -7 at NC State at noon. Notre Dame did beat Tennessee State 56-3 last week, and just an absolute thrashing. NC State beat UConn 24-14. I'm actually going to go ahead and just tell you I'm taking Notre Dame minus the 7. I loved what I saw from their offensive line and their defensive line so far. And I'm not sure NC State's ready to contend with that type of physicality. I'm taking Notre Dame minus the 7.
Yeah, I think this is going to be their first real test playing NC State. Irish defense has been very, very good the first 2 games. Hartman hasn't had the best performance in his historically against NC State. He's got 3 career starts and I think 6 picks. So that's something worth, considering here. I think this game may start a little slow for Notre Dame, but they're going to come out ahead in the second half. So I'm with you. I'm going to take the Irish -7.
All right. Number 12, Utah -7.5 at Baylor. So last week, this game was looking like a huge game. Like I was like, oh, here we go. This is that typical trap game going down to Waco. Cam Rising. Well, so we got all kinds of questions now because 1, is Cam Rising playing for Utah? And 2, how the hell did Texas State beat Baylor? So we're going into this one with quite a different opinion. Utah, as we talked about earlier, beat Florida 24-11 last week. Baylor was upset by Texas State 42-31. So Utah is -7.5 this week. I'm actually going to keep riding the Utah train like I did last week. I still think I love their defense. And if Cam Rising was listed at number 1 on the depth chart, like I said earlier, who knows, because he was last week also. But I still like what I saw from the backup quarterback and even the runner, the 3rd string. I think his last name was Johnson. I can't really remember, but I liked what I saw from him and his little limited time he had. So again, I'm sticking with Utah minus the 7.5.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like you said, the big question is, will Cam Rising play? The second question is, does it really matter? Baylor's defense just gave up 440 yards to Texas State, and they lost their quarterback for the next 2 to 3 weeks of the MCL injury. So I don't see this being much of a contest. So I'll take the Utes minus the 7.5.
The men of Troy coming into Kansas State, number 15 ranked this week, and they are a -15.5 for a noon game. Troy beat Stone Cold last week, Stephen F. Austin 48-30. Kansas State beat Southeast Missouri State 45-0. I'm going to say it every week. This is one of my teams. I'm not going to not back them. Give me Kansas State minus the 15.5. Troy is a very good team, though. I will say that. But I still like what Kansas State's done so far. I'm sticking with them.
Yeah, like you said, coming off a 48-point win against lawyer/professional wrestler/apparent lumberjack Stephen F. Austin. Gunnar Watson looks solid. He went 14-22 for 4 touchdowns. That said, Kansas State's not Stone Cold University. The Will Howard-led team here performed lights out. They had almost 600 yards of offense, even if it was against Southeast Missouri State. Kansas State continues the momentum at home here, so I'm taking Kansas State to cover.
One other thing to note there, because I'm sure no one watched Kansas State, Southeast Missouri State, but Will Howard had a passing, a rushing, and a receiving touchdown in that game.
It's very Travis Hunter.
He's better than Travis Hunter.
Oh, God.
All right. So we talked about this game a little bit earlier. Speaking of Travis Hunter, Nebraska is going to Boulder, the home opener for Prime. Number 22 ranked from unranked to 22. And if you heard me last week at the end of the episode, I said one thing. I said there's 3 lines to watch for. Jump on these early. They make no sense. Nebraska was a 7-point favorite at the end of the episode last week. Well, that how that has swung to a 9.5-point swing because Colorado is now a minus 2.5-point favorite. Nebraska went to Minnesota and lost 13-10, while Colorado defeated TCU 45-42. Where are you leaning for this one?
Yeah, all it took was 1 week for the Buffs to get ranked, right? It didn't take long for them to get noticed, so we'll see how they perform when they've got some larger expectations on them. If anybody is going to be able to get this team prepped, it's prime time. Again, this time it's against Matt Rule and the Cornhuskers, who just came off a pretty tough 13-10 loss. Sims threw 3 picks against the Golden Gophers. Colorado's defense has a bunch of playmakers. I'm going with Colorado minus the 2.5 here.
That is also where I'm leaning, just because I wasn't traveling yet when Nebraska played Minnesota, so I actually, unfortunately, got to watch all of that game, and my God, that was awful. I mean, I saw Jeff Sims when he was at Georgia Tech, and I didn't like him then. He actually was he was a Florida State commit at one point, and then he went to Georgia Tech, and he was not good there, and I'm not honestly sure why that's where Rule went in Nebraska, but maybe that was all he had. But yeah, I'm with you, Colorado, and even at 2.5, I'm shocked by this line. I think this is not. I think it's just because they had it set so high the other way to begin with. But to me, like, how is Colorado not a 10-point favorite in this game?
Yeah, I don't know. This is actually my lock for the week.
I assumed. I honestly I didn't lock it just because I assumed you were going to. But yeah, when I looked at it, I'm like, this is, to me, easy money. Like, if Nebraska wins this game, then next week's gonna be real interesting on this episode, on our episode, because we're gonna have a lot to discuss. Because I see no reason this game should be close, but we'll see what happens. In a true travesty of college football, why is Clemson still ranked? Charleston's, and they're playing Charleston Southern, for Christ's sake. So Charleston Southern is at number 25 Clemson this week. They put that game at 2:15 for a reason. No one's watching it. All right, we're not picking that. It doesn't have a line yet, and hopefully we don't have to pick it to begin with. But that's what I say with early season rankings. There's no reason Clemson should still be ranked after that performance. So a big game with 2 people that I can't really stand anymore. Number 23, Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, minus 4.5, is traveling to Miami. 3:30 kick. A&M did come out and do what we said we would like them to, or would like to see them do. They beat New Mexico 52-10. We saw what the offense could do. It was rolling. Miami, on the other hand, came out and beat Miami of Ohio, a MAC school, 38-3. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Texas A&M won this game, I think 17-9 last season. I don't think it's going to be quite this close. The Aggies held Mexico to 10 points with Petrino, and the quarterback's marriage seems to be going smoothly so far. I think the Aggies will keep it rolling here, so I'm going to take A&M on the road minus the 4.5.
I'm with you on that with A&M minus 4.5. And yeah, that game last year was surprisingly closer than it ever should have been. I know A&M didn't have the season they wanted, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, that game was in like some heavy rain at College Station. I know there was something going on with rain, but
A&M had a lot of games that shouldn't have been close that ended up being close, or they lost last year. So
right. All right, UNLV traveling to Ann Arbor, number 2 Michigan. Michigan a 36.5-point favorite, 3:30 kick. UNLV defeated Bryant 44-14, what I'm sure was a highly contested battle. Michigan played the Pirates. East Carolina beat them 30-3. I am going to take the 36.5. Give me Michigan.
Okay. Yeah. Game 1 for the Wolverines went well without Harbaugh, despite not covering the spread. There are some questions about Michigan's pass rush and the rushing attack. I think they only averaged like 3.9 yards per carry last week against that team. So, some people in Ann Arbor, I guess, are throwing some question marks up in the air. But, UNLV started the season running the ball well, converted on 9 of 15 third downs in their first game. Michigan's going to get this W, but I think UNLV can potentially do some ball control and keep it a little closer. So I'm going to take the 36.5 and UNLV on this. I think it's going to be a big win for Michigan, but I don't know that they're going to get up to 36.5.
All right. We got a top 25 battle next. Number 20, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. They are -7 traveling to Tulane, number 24 ranked this week. Ole Miss put an absolute beating on Mercer, 73-7 last week. Well, Tulane, I last week I talked this game up a little bit. I said I like South Alabama. I picked them to cover, and I thought it was going to be a much better game. Tulane came out and 37-17. I mean, they did what they continued their run from last year. They just kept it going, and I I honestly don't want to do this, but I'm taking Ole Miss -7 this week. But this is not Tulane winning. I mean, they're at their home field. Tulane winning this game wouldn't shock me at all.
No, yeah, this kind of feels like a trap game. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Michael Pratt is probably going to be a NFL quarterback sooner than later. Very, very good Green Wave defense against a Lane Kiffin group that just put up 73. Jackson Dart looked good with 4 touchdowns. Quinshawn Judkins looked really, really good. Um, I think it's going to be a good game, and it's going to be tough with this being a 7-point spread. But I'm going to go with you. I'm going to pick Lane Kiffin and Old Miss here to cover the 7.
All right. So we're heading to Seattle, Tulsa on the road at number 8, Washington, -34.5, 5 p.m. kick. My Washington team that I love and talk about every week beat the absolute shit out of Boise State last week. And like I said I don't think Boise State's defense can handle this, and I don't think Boise State's offense can handle Washington's defense. And they didn't. 56-19, Washington beat Boise. And we'll talk about Boise here in a few minutes with the UCF game, but it seems like it's hurt their fan base a little bit, which we'll get into a little bit later. Tulsa, on the other hand, did beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 42-7. 34.5 does not seem like enough for me. My God, what they were doing on offense at Washington, I don't see that being stopped. And I'm not sure Tulsa can score 20 like Boise did. So give me Washington to cover the 34.5.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Penix looked like an absolute stud last week, keeping himself in the Heisman conversation early with 450 and 5 touchdowns. Last week they won by 35, which puts them just over this week's spread, but I don't think Tulsa's a better team than Boise State is, so I'm taking Washington at home to cover.
All right, we got a battle in North Carolina. App State traveling just a couple hours over to Chapel Hill for number 17, North Carolina. North Carolina is -18.5 at a 5:15 kick. App State did beat Gardner-Webb 45-24, where North Carolina beat South Carolina 31-17. North Carolina was very impressive. I'm taking them minus the 18.5 and to keep it rolling.
Yeah, Tar Heels defense showed up last week against Spencer Rattler and the Gamecocks. Drake May looked as good as expected. App State's Joey Aguilar did throw 4 touchdowns last week, but that was against Gardner-Webb. NC and App State have played twice in the past 4 years, and a couple of those games were decided by like a combined 5 points, which makes this game a little bit more interesting because App State seems to play North Carolina pretty well. I think North Carolina is going to win this, but I don't know that they're going to cover the spread. So I'm going to take App State in the 18.5.
All right. The horse team, SMU, traveling to Oklahoma, which is number 18 this week, minus 16.5 for a 6 p.m. kick. The horse team beat La Tech 38-14 last week, while Oklahoma just absolutely did bad things to Arkansas State, 73-0. I liked what I saw out of Dylan Gabriel. I like what I see out of Oklahoma's defense. I will continue this. Give me Oklahoma minus the 16.5.
Yeah, Venables and company came out and made a statement. It was Arkansas State, but 73-0 is still a statement game, regardless of who you're playing. The horse team's a better opponent than Arkansas State, but Oklahoma showed they can score in multiple ways while being supported with an improved defense over last year. So I'm with you. I'm taking Oklahoma minus the 16.5.
Newly ranked Duke, number 21 on the polls in their debut. 6 p.m. kick at home against Lafayette. There is no line there, so check the socials for that one also. This one, another interesting one. Last week we talked up to be a potential huge game, even a trap game for Oregon, going on the road to Texas Tech. So we got number 13 Oregon -6.5 at Texas Tech, 7 p.m. kick. Now Oregon, they handled their business at home last week. Portland State, they beat them 81-7. Texas Tech, though, I said last week, why are they going there? Why are they playing this game? This makes no sense. And they went to Laramie and they got beat by Wyoming in double overtime, 35-33. I still don't understand why they should have never went there. That's not where they should. They got what they asked for. And that actually flipped my opinion on them. Going last week when I was reading into this game, I was pretty big on Texas Tech, a former Oregon quarterback coming to Lubbock. Like that, the signs say Texas Tech there. After what Oregon showed on offense, I'm going to take Oregon minus the 6.5.
Yeah. Tech's coming off the shocker of a loss, but Bo Nix and company, they're going into Lubbock to prove that last week wasn't an exception. So I'm with you. I'm quacking all the way to this 6.5 spread and taking the Ducks to win.
All right. And the big one, number 11, Texas at number 3, Alabama.
Is Texas going to Texas?
That's the question. Alabama is -7, 7 p.m. kick. Texas came out and beat Rice 37-10. Bama beat Middle Tennessee State 56-7. I would say both of them knew it was their tune-up game. Neither one of them really were trying to do anything too impressive. I still don't think we have Bama's full answer at quarterback. It seems like Milroe is probably going to be the starter again, but who knows if that's the full time. I'll actually let you pick this one first. I'm interested to see who you pick. I have a feeling who you're going to pick, but Alabama -7 versus Texas.
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to say here is that I find it hilarious that Alabama is returning the favor from Texas's act last year and sticking their 5,000 fans in their band in the upper deck of Bryant-Denny Stadium because they don't have to follow the SEC rules yet, which I actually read just before the show here that the Longhorn band is not even coming to the game now because of that. So very funny. I think the difference in this game is going to be Ewers. He still has not figured out how to throw the deep ball. Last week, he went 0 for 7 when he was passing over 20 yards in a game that could easily see 60 plus points scored. That can hurt the Longhorns. Texas going to Texas here. I'm going to take Bama at home -7.
Yeah. And so my thoughts on this game, just because I in the preview episode, I said Texas has one of the best rosters in college football. But they're Texas. That was our big conversation, is what will they do? My thing is with this game is Alabama's offense hasn't proven enough to me yet. And I mean, I know it's limited, but I still think Texas has enough on defense to be able to stop what they're doing on offense right now. I don't think that the run heavy is going to work against a team like this. Bama might still win the game. I just am not sure they can win it by 7 or more. I will take Texas plus the points, but I do anticipate this to be a great game.
Yeah, if this line would have been 6.5, I'd have been a little bit more confident in it. But the fact that it's 7 makes me a little bit more concerned. But yeah, I'm still going with Bama.
So we saw the debut of the Dairy Raid last week, and my God, they ran all over the field. Like we said, Dairy Raid doesn't necessarily mean they're just going to air it out and sling it all over the place. They are traveling to one of the toughest places to play in college football this week. They're going to Pullman, Washington. Number 19, Wisconsin, -6.5 at Washington State, 7:30 kick. Wisconsin beat Buffalo 38-17, while Washington State beat Colorado State 50-24. I'm going to keep it pretty simple here. I think Wisconsin can still be too physical for Washington State. That environment is going to be crazy, though. As long as the environment doesn't become something and there's good weather and everything's fine, I think Wisconsin covers this. Probably like a 10-point win for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I actually think that this is going to be a 10-point spread, which is what's going to end up happening here. Luke Fickell bringing in that ground-heavy approach. The key to Wisconsin winning this game is going to be to keep the ball out of Cam Ward's hands in that up-tempo offense, and I think that can control the environment a little bit because if Wisconsin controls the time of possession, then that'll keep the crowd quiet, right? So I think it's going to be a tight one, but I think Wisconsin takes this. So I'll take Wisconsin minus the 6.5.
Yeah, I think one of the keys there, Wisconsin needs to score early. They've got to don't keep it close late because that will become a huge factor.
Yeah. Because Washington State can put points up quick.
Yeah. Next game we do not have a line for. Someone fell to number 14 after a loss in Orlando. LSU 7:30 kick. Facing Grambling, probably be a good band performance, but I don't know. The line's probably going to be 50 on that game. That will be picked on the socials if a line does ever come out. But on the other hand, another team is now number 4 in the nation. Team in Tallahassee, Florida State, a 30.5-point favorite against Southern Miss. I'm not a fan that this is an 8:30 kickoff. Give me a 7. I don't want 8:30. Southern Miss came out. They beat Alcorn State 40-14. Knowles beat LSU 45-24. What is your pick for this game?
I mean, we already discussed this. This Knowles team looks good, really good. And how they reacted in the second half, coming off of the game with LSU, I think says a lot about this team. Unfortunately for Southern Miss, they're playing their first official game at home coming off this victory against Brian Kelly and the Bayou Bengals. So I think the Knowles keep it chopping here and cover the 30.5.
Yeah, I'm going with Florida State too. The only thing I really can say, it is a short week now. And you're going to have that hype of what just happened. And it's like, usually there is a little bit of a letdown there. I still think 30.5 this offense should just absolutely obliterate Southern Miss's defense. So unless Southern Miss happens to score like 20 points, I think it's a pretty easy cover.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how quickly your first and second string guys get pulled out.
Right. UC Davis is going to go on the road to Corvallis, number 16, Oregon State, 9 p.m. game. We do not have a line for that one yet either. Again, that'll be a social pick, but I guarantee there is one guy in Corvallis, Oregon right now with a big smile on his face watching his former team after that loss Monday night because he was taking a lot of blame for their issues last year on offense, and seems maybe it wasn't him. So DJU, hopefully you have another good game at Oregon State. He actually was really good last week also. Stanford, one of the worst teams in the nation, traveling to LA, number 6 now, USC, a minus 29.5, 10:30 kick. Stanford did actually go to Hawaii, though, and get a win, 37-24. Well, USC beat Nevada 66-14. I don't think Stanford is worth anything, so I will take USC minus the 29.
Yeah, Trojan offense is rolling right now. They're averaging 61 points a game. So you couple that with the fact that Hawaii just went for 355 and 3 passing touchdowns against Stanford. Sewell's going to light it up on these dudes. So
yeah,
he's easier spread to cover than the last 2 weeks. These teams are familiar with each other, but I don't see Stanford keeping this game close. So I'm taking USC minus 29.5.
All right. We got one of my favorite games of the week coming up next. It's a Friday night battle. Illinois traveling to Kansas. Kansas is minus 3. Last week, Illinois did beat your Toledo team 30-28, but Toledo did end up getting the cover, while Kansas beat Missouri State 48-17. Kansas, like we talked about before, they brought back a ton of players, huge returning production. In this is a home environment on a Friday night. I love what this is going to be. Give me Kansas minus the 3.
Yep, right there with you. Jayhawks won convincingly last week. Illini barely slipped by Toledo. Looks like the Fighting Illini defense has taken a step back from last season, which gives the Jayhawk offense a chance to get rolling early. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking Kansas minus 3.
All right. So we're going to go to Iowa minus 3.5 at Iowa State, 3:30 kick. Hopefully,
a worst trophy.
Yeah, what, the Cyhawk?
The Cyhawk trophy. It's the dumbest thing ever.
Well, I think it should just be turned into a big, I don't know what a good gambling logo is, but it seems like everyone in both of these teams just seem to have gambling issues. So, let's see. Iowa beat Utah State 24-14. Iowa State's coming off a Northern Iowa win 30-9. I'm actually just going to go with Iowa minus the 3.5. Iowa, I think last year, or somewhat recently, was the first time Iowa State has beat them in like 10 years. So I'm going to stick with Iowa. I think that their offense has a little bit more firepower this year, and I'm ready to see what they can do with the Cyhawk trophy as they take it back.
Yeah, Cyhawk trophy up for grabs here. This is I like watching this game just because they've been playing since the 1800s, which is just interesting to me. Their first game was in 1894. Hawkeyes have won 5 of the last 6, but they've only won by an average of 6 in their last 4 games. So Iowa State tends to keep it close. I think this is a little bit of a toss-up, especially with it being at Iowa State. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes to cover the 3.5, but I won't be surprised if this game flips. I would stay away from it from a betting standpoint.
Or just bet the under like the punters do. So Purdue at Virginia Tech, Vatech -3 noon game. Purdue coming off the loss to Fresno State 39-35. Vatech beat Old Dominion 36-17. Actually kind of like what I saw out of Purdue. I watched the game just because of Fresno, and Vatech is not. I'm actually shocked Vatech is favored here. I think it might just be a home field thing here why they're favored, but I think Purdue wins this game outright. I will take Purdue.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. They lost a heartbreaker against Fresno last week while Virginia Tech took the dub against Old Dominion. It's a tight spread, but yeah, I'm going to take Purdue to win this one.
This one we threw in just because UMass got their first win and then proceeded to get murdered by Auburn. So I'm interested to see if we can actually get back on track with UMass or if it's back to the same where we bet against them every week. Miami of Ohio -6.5 at UMass. Now, Miami of Ohio lost to the Hurricanes of Miami last week, 38-3. UMass went to Auburn and lost 59-14. I said week 1, I bet against UMass every week of the year. They proved me wrong that week. Came back last week. So I think this will be the true test. I am actually going to take Miami of Ohio -6.5 just to hope that the UMass train continues.
Yeah. Came into the year talking mad shit, and then they threw up 41 on New Mexico State. But
I know.
Yeah, didn't come to fruition last week against Auburn. They got clobbered. Home game for UMass, which I honestly didn't even know they had a home football field. I thought maybe they just went to play at another stadium close by.
I think they play at the Country Village pool.
It's all making more sense now. So home game for UMass, but I think the Redhawks come out swinging here. I'm going to take Miami of Ohio -6.5.
All right. I made mention of this game earlier. So UCF -3.5 at Boise State. Boise State has put all kinds of stuff out. They are having a lot of trouble selling tickets to this game, which I find crazy because Boise State's one of those home atmospheres. They went a few years ago, they'd gone forever without even losing at home. That was the place you didn't go because you lost. Well, UCF has a very high-powered offense. I just saw what Washington did to Boise State last week. UCF beat Kent State 56-6, while Boise lost to Washington 56-19. I think UCF rolls all over them. Give me UCF -3.5. The only way Boise State contends is if their offense comes out and puts up 40 points. Then we're talking a different story, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'll take UCF -3.5.
Yeah, I did read that UCF is preparing for this game by practicing on the blue turf, which I thought was funny. But yeah, another dual threat QB in Plumlee with UCF. It's probably going to spell trouble for Boise State, so I'm taking UCF -3.5.
Auburn making an interesting road trip out to Cal. Auburn -6.5 at Cal. 10:30 kick also. Like we just talked about, they did beat UMass 59-14, while Cal beat North Texas 58-21. I actually really like what Cal's been doing. I love their defense. I'm going to take Cal with the upset. Give me them plus the 6.5, but I think we might be talking a money line pick there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Auburn won pretty convincingly last week against UMass. We just talked about the Cal also won convincingly against North Texas. It should be an interesting game. But Auburn plays a late one on the road, man. 10:30 start time is not going to be easy. Cal can stick around with tough opponents. I think this could be a trap game for Auburn, so I'm sticking with you. I'm going to go Cal plus the 6.5.
All right, we're closing out the Muncie six pack with Oklahoma State -3.5 at Arizona State. 10:30 kick. Oklahoma State beat Central Arkansas 27-13, while Arizona State beat Southern Utah 24-21. Arizona State's just a little too young for me still. I like Oklahoma State -3.5. It's not going to be a tough environment at Arizona State. I do love what their offense is doing, but I still think Oklahoma State has the experience. So I'm taking them to cover.
Yep, I'm with you. Oklahoma State took this matchup last year 34-17. It was a rainy Saturday night in Stillwater. Cowboys were ranked, I think, in the top 15 at that time. They're not ranked this year, but I don't think that matters. I'm taking Oklahoma State -3.5.
All right, so it's time for our lock for week 2. I know you mentioned it already. Go ahead and throw it out there again. What was your lock for week 2?
Going with the primetime team. Going to have the Colorado Buffs at home against Nebraska. They're currently sitting at -2.5. Lock that all day long. I've got the Colorado team winning that game.
I'm going to second that. That's not my lock just because we're not locking the same game here, but I'm with you. To me, that's one of the easiest picks of the week. My lock, I'm taking Texas A&M minus the 4.5 at Miami. Miami, yeah, they beat Miami of Ohio. Wonderful. That's nothing that should have made that line be that low. I think Texas A&M is easily a 9-point favorite in this game. I love what the offense is going to look like. I don't think Miami can handle it. Give me A&M minus the 4.5 for my lock. And hopefully we come back with 2-1. We'll actually have winning records instead of being 500 on both. Anything else we want to throw in for week 2?
No, man, I just hope that our week 1 momentum continues into week 2 and we just continue to leave week 0 in the dust. So
week 0 was bad. But yeah, 14-12 he was 15-11, so very good records for the week last week, and roll those into week 2. That's pretty much it then. If there's nothing else, we'll see you guys next Tuesday for another NCAA football edition of the Tuesday Night Touchdown podcast. Don't forget the social medias is Tuesday Night TD podcast, TUES NIGHT TD POD. There's it pod or podcast on the socials actually. Podcast,
pod.
Right? It is just pod. So
yeah.
Tuesday Night Touchdown pod, TUES NIGHT TD pod. Follow those for our picks for the games that don't have lines. And then, like I said, always send us your lock of the week also, and we'll mention it on the show. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for us. He is Reese. I am Jacob. We will see you guys next week with another wonderful edition talking about the death of Clemson. Have a good week.
Cheers, guys. Good luck. Good gambling.